Hey everyone, Kevin Rose here. Welcome to 100 Proof, our bi-weekly variety show covering all things NFTs. And today is a weird episode, Derek. Derek Edwards, of course, joining me here. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. We've got a special guest on air with us right now.
Literally a surprise guest. We were sitting there working on the show. I sent out a tweet saying, hey, what should we talk about today? And everyone's like, Degods, like, you got to go chat. They have this new thing, blah, blah. And it was like hitting my Twitter replies. And then I was like, I should reach out to Frank, who's like, running this thing. And I sent you a DM, Frank, and now you're here.
Hey, yo, let's go.
And you're like, I just woke up. Is that true?
I just woke up. Yes. Accurate. Very accurate. But this is awesome. I'm a huge fan. Happy to be here and love what you guys are doing.
Stoked to have you, man. So I think that we all have different levels of understanding of Degods, and I'm sure the community does as well. Derek and I were talking about this just before you joined. Can you give us kind of like the overarching picture of what you've created and bring us up to speed?
Absolutely. Would love to. We'll try to keep it brief. We launched Degods October 2021, and when we launched, when we started, we were a team of 5 guys, all from the startup world, in different kind of backgrounds there. And when we launched Degods, we really had no idea what we were doing. We just knew we wanted to do something kind of interesting. So the way that we started is we launched with this thing called the paper hand bitch tax. And so we had like the NFTs, the 10,000 NFTs, but we also had the paper hand bitch tax. And that the idea behind that was, people hate it when people list under the floor, so why don't we just tax people that list under the floor 33.3%? What could go wrong? Let's see what happens. And so we launched with this idea. I think that got a lot of people excited. We were really hyped up project when we first minted, but the idea just wasn't fully thought out, and it really just didn't work. And so for 4 months, people just started hating us as a team. Volume was basically going to zero, floor price is basically going to zero. And that was a really formative time for us because we had no intention of rugging the project or making people feel like we weren't, trying to make something really cool here. And so we just kind of pivoted everything in December of last year, and we decided to just have a deep focus on listening to what our holders wanted and trying to make really cool, magical internet experiences for our holders. And so that's kind of what's led to our rise over the last 9 months. And so now we are like the number 1 Solana NFT by pretty huge orders of magnitude. I think if you take the next 10 projects by market cap combined, like Degods is still bigger than all of them on Solana. And so we've been growing, and we have this new project coming out called y00ts, and that should be minting in the next few days. There's a lot more, but that's like a very high level summary. We don't really have a clean narrative because things are always changing, and we're always down to somebody has a good idea in the community. We're like, all right, let's go do that. If we have a good idea on the team, we're like, let's go do that. And so it's kind of a clusterfuck in a lot of ways, but in that way, it's also fun, I think, for our holders and for people to kind of hop in at any time.
I mean, the paper-handed bitch tax is just hilarious. It's awesome.
Horrible idea, but it was really funny. Yeah.
So let's take that. You were like, okay, shit. Like we've all been there, and at least I have in our NFT projects where you're like, okay, I could have done that differently.
Yep.
So you go on, and what would you say over the last, you said 9 or so months that what have you done right? Like why the rise here? Why did you guys blow up and get to where you are today?
Yeah, great question. I think what we understood starting in January is the name of the game with NFTs in its current state is capturing attention, both current attention and then attention of people that are interested in speculating on what's going to happen in the future. And we've just taken a pretty data-driven startup approach to growth when it comes to, Degods and now soon with y00ts, where, we're tracking metrics like volume, floor price, like all this stuff, like the consumers or holders of our project care about. And we're trying to build and launch different products like, events, moments that we believe will drive that excitement and hype around the project. And so that is what I think we've done right, to a pretty big degree, is listening to what the holders want and then not doing exactly what they say, but thinking of a really viral, super hype idea, and then launching that in a way that we know will get attention of everybody on crypto Twitter. And the most recent thing with this new NFT project, y00ts, we did this scholarship application process like you're describing. And kind of from the inception of the idea, we knew that this thing would just take over the airwaves on crypto Twitter. And so that's been working really well. And we want to just keep launching what we call magical experiences for holders, where everybody in the community or everyone on crypto Twitter is talking about whatever we're doing or building. And that makes it fun for the holders, makes it fun for people to hop in and be a part of what we're doing. And it bonds our community members closer together, because when crazy shit happens, that's what connects internet strangers together, because that's a shared experience that these people have. And that's what I think is priceless, with this whole NFT movement. But yeah.
I love that. You definitely, we think in the same way, in that I believe there has to be these big kind of cultural type moments like these, something, a little bit of surprise, a little bit of delight, and just something that's like, shakes things up a bit, right? Like that's a magical thing to have happen for your project.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, when did this idea of kind of like, now you have a staking mechanic as well, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, when did that come in, and how does that work exactly?
Yeah, great question. So, January of last year, we looked at the idea of having a utility token attached to our NFT. Felt like it would be a cool idea because we could do interesting things to reward the holders with that. Talked to a bunch of lawyers and found out like a lot of the ways that we could theoretically do it would be non-compliant. And so we decided to take a really radical approach with it, which was let's just model our utility token exactly off Bitcoin. And so we did no pre-mine, no pre-supply. Founders didn't get anything, team didn't get anything. Starts at a zero supply. The token's called Dust. And we basically said the only way that you can get Dust is if you mine it by staking your DeGods. And the total max supply will be 33.3 million Dust ever in circulation. And by starting with those really simple rules, what's happened that's kind of magical is there are literally, 80,000 Dust holders right now in Solana, and there's only 4,300 DeGod holders. And the reason is, as we've grown as a community, new projects have been minting portions of their mint in Dust. You have DeFi protocols integrating Dust for interesting use cases. You have community members all using it for gambling on different services. It's been a pretty organic spread of our token to way more than just the DeGods community, because I think we set it up with really fair rules, and people integrate it to get access to our holders. That has become more and more of a sought after group of people as we've grown as an NFT project. So that's how the staking mechanism works at a core level, and it's going to end. It's not forever in any way. The mechanism will likely end later this year, and that's when the last amount of mining will be, the last Dust will be mined. But that's where I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing, Kevin, where I am the first one to give you guys all the credit in the world. Nesting as a concept blew my mind when I first saw it. The moment I saw it, when you guys minted, I said this is going to change the way that NFT projects operate forever, and I still believe that. And we're stealing the fuck out of that for everything we do. So once the mining emissions end for DeGods, we're going to transition over to the no token attached staking mechanism that you guys kind of pioneered, and I'm a huge fan of that. We'll be doing that for y00ts as well. I love, that's, I think, one of the coolest things Moonbirds has brought to the table. And that's just the beginning. As we all know, you guys are just getting started. So, that's
sweet. Well, we'll have to keep chatting so I can take some of your Dust ideas and implement those back into what we're doing.
Yeah, I would love that. I think, it'd be fun. 100%.
Frank, this is super helpful. Love everything that you're describing about how the project got started. I have just a quick clarifying question, just because I'm trying to understand better. What's the relationship between DeGods and Dead Gods? And then the follow-up to that is, what is the ambition for Dust? Like steady state, what are you hoping Dust turns into for the DeGod ecosystem, the y00ts ecosystem, and more broadly, it sounds like the Solana ecosystem?
I love these questions. So Dead Gods is a funny story. I think I'm pretty known for being very transparent and honest about our intentions a lot of times. And I'll say this, when we first started DeGods, a big priority for us was honestly we're a bunch of 20-year-old kids in the startup world, we thought, wow, let's do NFTs. We can make a lot of money. Like that's what got us into it. And we launched, we launched the idea behind Degods, and there was a lot of traction, hype around it from our first organic tweet that we put out. And so we definitely rushed the original art for Degods, I would say. And we tried to get it done in a really short amount of time. And I think what that ended up leaving us with was a pretty mid art collection. And so over the yeah, and I was like honest, I'd say like I'd say there was a lot of floor Degods that were just like ugly as fuck. Like I would always say it myself, they're just I can't lie to my community. I'm like, these are bad. And so
I'm looking at the floors right now. Which of these, you can see them on your screen here, which of these would you look at and just be like, oh, that's shit?
Those are the dead gods, which I'm super hyped on.
Oh, these are all the deads. Okay.
Yeah, those are the dead gods. I'm really hyped on those. The D gods are the ones where there's a lot of bad ones. A lot of them have been converted, so I'll get to how dead gods came about. We're all about coming up with innovative ideas with constraints around problems. So to me, I looked at the problem of our collection, which was a lot of the D gods are not aesthetic. Nobody would want to buy them. So how do we solve this? And so we came up with the idea of an art upgrade by basically, instead of making a new collection, like a second gen collection, let's redo the entire Degods art, like literally every single trait, and let's do it with the quality that we know we're capable of. We even tapped a few one-on-one artists to work with us, and that started a 3-month journey that was the journey to Dead Gods. And at this point, when we started the journey to Dead Gods, we were like at 5 soul floor. Nobody really gave a shit about who we were or what the project was, but it was the journey to Dead Gods that kind of really put us on the map, because I'm a firm believer that art is a huge piece. It's a very important piece of a strong NFT community, because that is what people will raw. That's the people's identity. So we need to make sure it's high quality. And so we redid all of the art, and instead of making it a separate NFT, we actually just updated the metadata on the original NFT itself.
Oh wait, was that opt-in though, man? Did you swap people's art on them?
No, it was completely opt-in. It was actually,
okay, good.
You pay dust, yeah, you pay dust to do it, and so it was completely opt-in, and that's what I think made it a really fun dynamic, because people were able to opt in on whether they wanted the upgraded art, and they had to pay dust to do it. But if you paid the dust to do it, you get an increase in your staking rewards, and so that created a fun dynamic on the tokenomic level, where people that were early, as more and more people came in and really loved the art, it kind of put us on the map in a big way. Because I'm very proud of the Dead Gods art. I think it's, in my opinion, some of the best. I'm obviously extremely biased here. It's just very opinionated. It's edgy. It's different. And I'm very excited about it. But yeah, that's how Dead Gods came about. Honestly, we wanted to make the art better, and we were trying to think of a creative way to solve that problem.
For somebody that's in here, like I'm here, on Magic Eden looking and kind of browsing and traversing. Obviously, I've seen you guys a long time ago, but I've never gone that deep, right? So how can I tell when something is a dead god versus a D god versus upgraded art versus not? Like, where's the original art here? So
I think if you go to version, you see on the left there's a filter for version. There's the D-Gods, you can kind of filter by that. And if you take the buy now, you see D-God, Dead Gods. So if you click D-God, you can see these are all Dead Gods that you're looking at. And so, and then take out the buy now filter. Yeah, it turned it off, yeah. Perfect. And then I think you're on Dead God filter now, so go to D-God now, and then turn off the Dead. Okay, so go there and then turn off Dead God. So that should just be just D-God. Now, how do I know if these have been? Oh yeah, that's not. Yeah, now it's like pretty obvious. Yeah, right. So these are yeah. So we literally had like yeah. Exactly. My voice. Exactly. Right, let me take a look at this boy right the zoo right here. Okay. So this is a V1 art, I take it. Exactly, yeah. So it's like, we had like glow, we had some mushroom heads, we had a plank on the head, and it was not, it's not the level that we thought we were capable of. You got that goatee. Dude, so, there's something, at some point, I mean, this, people are going to look back on these and be like, oh, the non-upgraded ones are the OGs. The OGs, that first collection, the untouched, Well, it's funny because I always tell people, the thing that's cool, you guys are startups, you understand, like, I'm a big cohorts guy. Like, I like to create cohorts within our community. And so for y00ts, for example, it's like we want to incentivize our most loyal holders, and we want to reward our most loyal holders. So people that have swapped into a dead god, that have like kind of played the game that we've set up, we'll continue to reward those people deeper. And so only the dead gods are able to claim, the ute that we're about to be minting pretty soon. And the thing is like you can always upgrade your D-God to a dead god, and we're gonna launch a tool pretty soon in the next few months that'll let you swap back to the original art if you want to. But I'm all about, hey, how do we create smaller cohorts within our community? Because at a certain point, we can't airdrop our holder, all 10,000 of our holders every single time. Do you know what I mean? And I think you guys are running into this too with the new Mythic concept, with which I love. I thought it was really creative. What you guys are doing with the future with Moonbirds, you have to create smaller subsections within your community in order to properly reward people over a long period of time. And so having these opt-in mechanisms over a long period of time, I think creates a great way for us to incentivize people to keep going and playing this like a choose your own adventure. So people can have the theory that D-Gods are going to be more rare, but in that same vein, we could also airdrop a ton of value and also provide a lot more value to the dead god holders, and then soon the dead god holders that claim their utes. And that just creates these smaller and smaller cohorts, which is kind of how I think about it. And then D-Gods can always be our last priority because they are having this thesis that over the long term, they're going to be more valuable, which is fine. But then that allows us to focus on a smaller subsection of the community and, continue to build in that way. I don't know if that fully made sense, but that's how I think about it.
It does.
Go ahead, Derek.
I was going to say, there's something so self-aware about you, Frank, and this project. I'm just chuckling because I'm going through your website right now, and you get to the roadmap section, and it literally says, our roadmap looks like a 5-year-old drew it. Where are all the words? And it's just a picture. And I guess there's this really interesting dynamic that's at play. That's kind of baked into everything that you're talking about, which is, you're almost like breaking the fourth wall and really leaning into this idea that the audience, the community is actually part of the project. And every move you make is really in service to that two-way conversation that you're having with your user owners, both through the faux roadmap you've got here, through the mechanic of listening about where the art stood and how it could change. There's just something so interesting about that approach. I'd love to just listen to you riff on how you came to that conclusion and why that has helped set this thing on fire.
Yeah, I think I can be honest here. It's partly selfish / it makes life a lot easier when we offload decisions to the community sometimes. And I don't mean in the pure DAO sense. I mean more like if the community feels heard in whatever decisions that we make, or it feels like the decisions that we make are directly in response to what community's concerns are, it helps us kind of have this vibe of oh, yo, D-Gods never misses. They always hit. And similar with what we're doing with Utes, this has been a long process around us building this new mint. And a lot of it has been influenced, truthfully, from the kind of banter on Twitter Spaces or what people criticize us for on Twitter, because we're really active on these platforms. I read a lot of people's criticisms, and I'm like, hey, the magic of this is I can read someone's criticism, think internally for myself, is this valid or not? If it is, okay, guys, go back to the drawing board. Let's figure out how we can fix this problem. And so I find that it makes life a lot easier because it means that we don't have to be these, giga brain geniuses to continually make the community hyped, to continually kind of rise as a project, because we're offloading a lot of these core controversial decisions to what we're seeing the community is kind of talking about and discussing. And that doesn't mean that the community is always right. Sometimes we're mentioning here, we're setting up a system where there's so many stakeholders involved, so many people with different priorities. And Kevin, I'm sure you guys understand this as well. What you might believe is best for the project because you have access to all the information and every angle of where the people, where you're looking at this from, where the holders might only have access to one sliver of information. So it's not like we're looking at the community to make all the decisions for us. I just find that if the vibe of what we do if the vibe that we give off is that, hey, if we fuck up or we make a bad decision, we're never going to turn off the noise. We'll listen to what you guys have to say. And if there's a logical argument to be made of why we made the wrong decision, we'll go back and we'll change that decision, or we'll fix it, or we'll make it right. And I think that makes life a lot more straightforward and simple when running these projects. Yeah.
That sounds absolutely right. For us, we think of it as the community, they're not going to control like the decision making process, but we always promise they'll have a seat at the table, right? So they should always be in that conversation and be able to voice, like a board of directors would at a traditional company or something, where they're there at the ground floor, able to talk with management and discuss what's going on. So
Kevin, I have to ask you. I mean, bro, how does it feel? You've been in the game a long time, creating businesses, being around a lot of really successful businesses, even building some yourself. Is this like what you expected? Is this nothing like what you expected? Have you ever dealt with anything like this before, running a fucking NFT project? It's different, man.
Yeah, it's certainly different. When I was running Dig, we grew that to about 38 million people a month that used it. And there were certain things that we would do where people would just go crazy on us, and a lot of it wasn't even our own fault. Like they would see an article get pulled down from the front page that was reported a certain number of times. And, it'd be against their political agenda. And so I had people saying like, the next time you do a live show, I'm going to bring a gun and kill you. And so Jesus. I had to call the FBI. I had to have like undercover armed people that were around me when we were doing live events and things like that. And so I've been through a bit of this in the past.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I will say this time around, it's better in some ways, and in some ways it's worse. Like the fact that everyone can be anonymous, and anonymous can oftentimes go hand in hand with trolls. Mm-hmm. And if someone will just end up being just a dick, and or they have agendas, right? They come in, they're trying to pump another bag. Yep. And we've seen coordinated attacks, not to any crazy scale, but there was one time where one of our members had access to another alpha group, and there were a bunch of people coming in to purposely spread FUD inside of our Discord that I don't know if it was oddities or what they had, but they were in there and they were spreading a bunch of FUD to get the prices down lower so they could buy in and then flip at a higher price. And it was just like, I'm wow. like, you assholes. Who does that? Right. Yeah. But it's just like, anytime there's an attack vector, you just always have to keep your eyes. I'm sure you're dealing with this too. If you're your top project on Solana, and I would say you must be, in terms of market cap, like pretty close to Moonbirds at this point, right?
Yeah, pretty close. It's, of course there's the memes on Twitter. I might participate in some, like on the, we're trying to flip, like we're pretty open, like, hey, we want to try to be number one NFT projects in the world. Like that's obviously our goals when we're building this stuff. But, I always say the pie is so small with NFTs right now. Yeah. It's just like startup stuff where like we all want to make the pie bigger, and that's going to happen with every project, like stepping it up and everybody getting better. And my thing, Kevin, is, I relate a lot pretty heavily, and I always go out of my way to talk to other founders of projects because I do think it's a unique experience in like the history of humanity a little bit. It's a small group of people that are running these projects in the grand scheme of things, and it can get stressful in very specific ways that I personally, have never experienced. And yeah, I'm a big fan of anybody that's in this space trying to do something cool. Like I always say that it's so difficult to actually navigate this space because there's no playbook, there's no rule book, there's no like Y Combinator or Paul Graham articles or like
right.
lean startup for NFT projects. And so yeah, I'm just a fan of anyone that's out here putting in I always say OHDI, like out here doing it, out here putting in like effort to try to make something cool. And so yeah, I think it's it's tough.
I'm in the same boat. I love the spirited, friendly competition with all these other projects. Like I think it's just fun. Like why not push each other to do crazy shit? Like you guys not gonna.
It's funny as fuck too. Like that's the best part, right? Like it is just the most fun, dopamine oriented like space 24/7, which is like electric. Yeah,
I gotta say there's a little bit of that kind of like, oh, you're not gonna see C0? Well, I will then. It's like let's go. Like, and just like pushing people in different directions, or like that makes me uncomfortable. Like, and I don't want to do that to my own bag holders because obviously that piece I mishandled. But I do like the fact of like pushing other projects in new creative directions and doing weird stuff. To your point earlier about doing nesting or what you've done with earning dust, and it's just like, how can we all try different shit? And we're going to throw 1,000 different things at the wall, and like 2 or 3 of them are going to stick and then become the norm going forward, right? So that's
and what a lot of the critics on Twitter don't necessarily understand is that when project founders, like yourself with CC0, I think I was critical of it on Twitter too, and I think what I always preface it with is like, hey, at the end of the day, none of this stuff is actually going, like, any one decision is not going to make or break a project, and it'll be us like these, Moonbirds and Kevin Rose and Proof are going to be here for a very long time. And if you really think that the death, quote unquote, note of Moonbirds is one decision, you have very little understanding of how this space works. Because in the same way they make that decision and you may or may not like it, they can make a decision or do a launch in a few weeks from now, in a month, in 3 months from now, that completely changes your mind. And because you decided to fade one decision instead of the entire like team or project or whatever it is, that's where a lot of people mess up. And I'm sure it's like one decision, bro. It's like, how many decisions are you making on a day-to-day basis? And so I just don't fault anyone for taking a crazy move. I think, of course, it's going to be feedback, backlash whenever people shake up the pot, But at the end of the day,
so you didn't go CC0? What license are y'all with?
We're trying to do something different with the IP. Like, so right now we're just on the standard thing. Like, we just, whatever Fenwick said, we just did like the standard, Yuga kind of playbook thing or whatever. I think what we're trying to do is focus more on people using like the Degods trademark copyright and the y00ts copyright. Because I feel like, at least on Solana, right? I'll give you guys some color here. Like, it's a pretty different audience, I'd say, than ETH. Like, nobody really talks about IP rights out here. Like, that's not a thing, like people are more, it's a different community, different audience. And so I think a lot of people in the Degods community haven't tried using their Degods for like anything specific, like their personal ones, as much as they try to use the Degods wordmark and brand. And a lot of times, like, I think it's pretty dope. Like, there's this coffee company that's been growing, and they're called D Beans, and they're getting more and more customers every week. The guy's like a killer that's running the company, and he's using like the Degods, like D brand kind of wordmark. And I don't mind it because I think it's good for the brand. It's cool. I'm happy that he's making money, happy that he's doing it.
Well, you can grant him a license too if you wanted to, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so we're trying to make our thoughts on IP is try to be really transparent and clear on how people can start using the Degods wordmark brand license, and then also the y00ts brand license. And then on the individual NFT stuff, we're just doing the Yuga thing. And CC0 to me is like one of those things where I'm really down to watch you guys, pioneer it, and I'm down to watch like you guys take the heat, and then I'll see.
Well, nobody's gonna remix that original Degods art anyway, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just playing. it's getting a lot better.
Yeah, facts. It has got. Yeah. No, I don't think.
Shit.
No. We deserve it, bro. That shit's on the blockchain. We had to fix it. No, but I'm down to see you guys kind of like pioneer that and take the heat, or we'll take the heat on something else, like with these scholarships. And then if it makes sense, I'm down to be late on CC0. Right now, it feels like it doesn't make sense for where we're at as a project.
Yeah. That's fair. The one thing I will say, and Derek is a much deeper thinker in this space than I am, but I certainly believe, and one of the things that CC0 was attractive to me about that whole move was that, we have a fixed number of resources and things that we can do on the BD front and everything that, we can go out and try and create those big cultural moments that make us, that cause that kind of Twitter viral stuff going on that you're talking about. And I just love the idea of deputizing a much bigger community to go after that versus having to go and hire a massive staff to do it.
Totally.
Like, I think that's a really powerful thing when done correctly. So, I'm excited to see where that all plays out. And also, I don't think none of us are going to win by copying Yuga's playbook, right? Yep. Like, that's not going to make you the number one NFT project in the world. It's not going to make Moonbirds the number one NFT project in the world. We got to forge our own path here,
Totally agree there.
Hey, I'll just jump in. Frank, it actually this conversation reminds me of like something you said very early on, which is optimizing for attention, and attention really being the scarce resource. Kevin and I have talked about this quite a bit. And the truth is like referencing a legal layer that's jurisdictionally bound really hamstrings the ability for you to get and generate as much attention as possible. And so like, the trade-off today is like not as obvious, but in the future, where hundreds of millions of people, billions of people are interacting with this technology, having a single point that controls IP really will probably hamstring the ability for work to proliferate in all sorts of directions. And the truth is if you're not thinking about engineering your work or your community or your product to be as networked as possible, my view is that you're setting yourself up for a structural disadvantage. To your point, Frank, like, we're not there yet. Like, that's not what the current market looks like. We have 2 million people that have ever bought an NFT on OpenSea. I don't know what the number is on Solana, maybe a little more. But these numbers are tiny. And so the truth is like it's a tight walk, it's a balance, and but I do have conviction that we've never seen anything like this, like internet technology meeting trust minimized ledgers, and the power of that, I think, is really going to lay waste to a lot of what the legal layer has done protecting rights over the last 100 years.
And here, I'll do this, as critical as I may have been on like CC0, just like for what makes sense for us as a project, I can lay out the bold thesis in my mind for you guys with TC0. To me, I think where it's lacking right now in general is there's a lack of infrastructure built around like CC0 projects, right? Like there's a lack of an easy way to edit the image or use it or understand kind of like what it means to use that image, how can value accrue via CC0. I think these are all tools and infra that you guys are now very incentivized to build, like other projects are incentivized to build. Nouns being the best example, where it feels like, with Nouns, why I always say Nouns is my favorite NFT project of all time. It's like every aspect of that project is built, in unison and in harmony. And so CC0 is harmonious with like the issuance model. It's harmonious with like the way their treasury works and the way they incentivize other people to build on top of it. And I think where Moonbirds is right now, from my outside take, right, it's that you guys have made the move to CC0, and now there's a lot of impetus to build, different ways for people to interact with this new paradigm of using the IP, using, Moonbirds all across the internet. I just think we're early on that, and over time, it seems like, that is clearly the direction you guys go. And where I definitely agree with you is that unlocking that magic of the entire internet, building on top of like what you guys build as a base layer, is 100% like you cannot compete with that with any centralized team. So I see that lane. I do think right now it's hard for people to grasp, it's hard for people to grasp that value right now, but I think it is a forward-looking move.
Yeah, that's the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's risky, which is why I respect it, and that's what I tweeted even when it happened. I was like, yo, like I don't think we should do this with you guys, but like, holy fuck, like this is wild. Like this is crazy shit happening right now.
Kevin doesn't
so it's
mess
exciting,
around, dude.
It's exciting. Yeah.
Guys, we're going to be dead in like, 40 years or whatever.
Yeah,
like, let's go.
Fuck
like,
it,
what are we doing? Like,
100%.
Like if we're this stuck in our ways and we're like, we're the old Web3 guys. Mm-hmm. Like, no, we're not. We're just getting started. Like, what the fuck? Like, roll the dice, people. Like, let's have fun.
No, I love it for that reason. I'm like, hey, this is, I think you guys will like this too. We always we're known for delaying, like we call it the delay. And the reason why is because I'll tweet out some crazy shit that we're going to do, and I'll set like a really unrealistic timeline so that way there's a lot of pressure on us internally as a team.
Your team must love that.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I think it leads to us making better stuff in a shorter amount of time, but we always end up delaying it. But what it does is we kind of use that Web3 build in public like meta to force ourselves to read all the hype that people have on Twitter, see these unrealistic deadlines that we've set for ourselves, and then that creates this like real deeper entrenched reason to prove the quote unquote haters wrong, to get this thing out there in the world, to make it really to blow people's minds with it. And I think that's similar with the CC0 stuff with you guys, where I can only imagine internally the pressure is on, right? Let's make this decision look good in the retroactively. And so that's what I think is I respect builder to builder is yo, I know you guys threw the gauntlet down, you're like, fuck it, let's go CC0, and now it's all right, let's make this a dub. And I like that. I think it's a fun way to operate for both the community and the team itself.
Yeah, you got to maintain that scrappy nature, Mm-hmm. It's because the bigger you get, the harder it is or the easier it is, especially when you bring in more and more senior folks that have worked at traditional startups and companies that are Web 2 ingrained in them. It's it's easy to forget that kind of YOLO attitude. Just go for it,
Here, I want to open this for you, Kevin, and and Derek too. I guess I always wish someone asked me this, but what do you wish that people that are critical of Moonbirds or people that are questioning decisions you guys make, what do you wish they understood, or what do you wish you could just say to them at a higher level? I'm curious,
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll say, and then I'll let Derek chime in. For me, having been a kind of angel investor in the tech space forever, for a long time, great businesses don't get built in 6 months. I don't care if it's Web3 or not. They get built over 5, 7, 10 plus years, and I don't think that's going to change. There's a lot of hype in this space, so it can seem like we were on a rocket ship, but even Yuga, I would say, they've got some big challenges ahead of them. And in terms of like, they have to make this metaverse thing work. Like if that shit don't work, watch out. So we've all got to go and kind of just remind everyone in this space that, well, this is what I hope actually of all of our collectors is that if you're looking for something that is going to give you that quick flip or that quick 5X, like we're probably not the project for you. But if you're looking for someone that's still going to be here 5 years from now, that's just going to go heads down and just build week over week, month over month, year over year, and like keep trying crazy shit, then that's the type of people we want involved in our ecosystem, So I would just tell people that they need to have a little bit of patience here. It's not about like it's not about win airdrop every 3 months, right? Like that is not going to end well for anyone. That's a dangerous, slippery slope to be in.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, I love that. I've invested in over 100 projects at Collab, so I've seen projects run the gauntlet at different points of their life cycle. I would say the thing with Web3 that's so interesting to me is something that you brought up early, Frank, where this is a very public technology and there's very public actions. But the truth is there's this real like information asymmetry that always exists with the people that are actually doing the work in the ring, actually creating the value and what the world sees. They see often the outputs, but not the thinking or design decisions or inputs that go into making those outputs. They usually see maybe a 10th of it or 20th
or less,
or less. And seeing both, like being a collector and seeing these wonderful outputs across PFPs and gaming assets and collectibles and art and generative art, and then also having a front row seat to how these marketplaces, these creators are creating work, to like how these things are getting put out there into the public arena. I don't think that the consuming public, the consuming owning public, understands often how much thoughtfulness is really going into each one of these decisions. And it's so easy to be there in the stadium stands cheering or booing, but really not understand exactly the depth to which a lot of these decisions are being made.
Made in the arena.
Yep.
100. Honestly, I would say the exact same as both of you guys were. My way of describing it is I really do wish when people write these very critical Twitter threads or just start to make jokes or whatever it is, I do wish that people's first response sometimes was to just ask more questions, like, why did you decide to do this, as opposed to writing the 50-piece thread on why your project is dead because, our product is dead, your product is dead because of this one thing that we did, and not asking like the questions of what was the thought process, why did we decide to do this, that kind of thing. And I find that to be one of the more annoying pieces of building in public. As much as I love it, and we mentioned how fun it is, and I wouldn't trade this for the world, it is sometimes exhausting where we'll spend a lot of time in making a decision, and then we'll put it out, and then people will take one headline, one clip, one piece of it, and then just extrapolate that to ad nauseum to infinity. And you're like, dude, that's not even one piece of like what we're even talking about here. So that is definitely something. Another question I did have for you guys. This is turning. I want to interview you. I've always wanted to talk to you. So, man, I'm wondering, like, what was that first week, 2 weeks, month for Moonbirds for you guys, like launching, like, because that was a monumental moment. Even us on the Solana side, like, I was just watching that and I was like, this is pure magic. Like, this is incredible. Like, what a way to enter the scene. How did you feel? Because I can't imagine you've ever had an experience like that, that mint and that kind of run up. I'm curious how you guys are feeling internally as a team there.
Yeah, I mean, when we put this out, we initially thought, and we said this in our very first future proof that we released, was like, hey, no one wants to have a card for the Proof Collective as their PFP. Like, a card isn't like a picture of a credit card is not like cool, right? To have your PFP. So, so Moonbirds was like these all-seeing, owls and all that. And we thought like they're these wise creatures that plays well with our eye towards collectability and not flipping and, putting the attention back on the real artists. And so we loved all that. We built the collection. We were really happy with it. And then we started to see a couple days prior, or probably about a week prior, I remember there was a couple people in Discord that were like, "What are you guys doing? This collection's not going to sell out. You're not marketing it hard enough." And we were like, "No, we just haven't started it yet. We're going to go on some podcasts. We're going to do this and that." And then we had our pre-mint and it just started climbing. And we're like, I was calling Brendan up. I'm like, "Are these spam accounts?" Like, because we had a pretty high hurdle. They had to verify that they had ETH in their wallet and all that stuff. And we're like, "What is going on here?" And a lot of it was just right place, right time. It was like and just knowing that there was going to be utility associated with a lot of these, and some of the nesting stuff, and it was just it was a lot of excitement just before things obviously went crazy and collapsed a few months later. But honestly, I thought I was like, we felt very confident knowing they would sell it at 2.5. And then if someone asked me like, where do you think it's going to land at end of day one? I was like, I don't know. There's a lot of demand here. So maybe 4.5 or 5 or something like that. And I thought they would just kind of stay there. And when they shot up and started like taking over some of these other projects and we started climbing, we were like, what the fuck? Because there were still only 4 of us working on the project. Right. Insane. And we're like, we need a lot more people. We don't even have full-time Discord moderators. Like we got like some volunteers and stuff. And like, there was a lot of stuff where there was nothing was written. It was just us kind of doing this stuff part-time, And it's like, crap. Okay. Well, shit, we're going to have to pause for a second on the Proof Collective stuff, really focus our efforts on Moonbirds now. And it was just like, but at the same time, we can't let go of the Proof Collective because they're kind of our most valuable, part of this whole thing. And so it was a lot of scrambling for about a month and a half. And it was just a lot of chaos, like the press started coming out and people wanted to interview and talk about how high these prices were. And so I sat the team down, which was small. I think maybe we had a couple contracts and whatnot. And I said, listen, the hype is at a 10, obviously. Our product is truly at a 1. Yeah. It's up to us to close that gap, And so we just need to remember that this is not going to be a straight up and to the right forever. This is going to get a correction, and we go heads down. We don't pay attention to floor prices. We don't talk about floor prices. Our floor is just ultimately a reflection of, one, how much people love the art, and obviously the utility that goes along with that, and then also our ability to execute. And if we just like keep focused on the execution side of it, we're just going to have a great collection. We'll have people that are really excited about what we do. So that was kind of the internal speech. It was still fucking crazy though.
And do you ever internalize? Because I know for me, I'm like, I turned 23 this year, and I think like the thing that makes me feel so grateful about this space and want to work in it for such a long time, like, you ever internalize how many, and I know we're all busy, we're all grinding, and it's like not a lot of time for reflection, but how many lives you guys have changed already, like to date, just by launching this project? Is that like something that brings, you excitement or happiness or fulfillment, stuff like that? Because that is where I find there's no other space, no other ecosystem in the world ever that I feel like has been this direct in the amount of impact, that one team, one individual team can have. How do you guys think about that?
Yeah. I'll take a stab and then I'll let Derek chime in, but I'll tell you that I've, with the Proof Collective pass getting down to 1 ETH and then shooting up to where it was the first time I started hearing about people that had sold one and I paid off college debt, or, insane. Things like this happened. You hear those stories and you're like, wow, that's amazing. The thing that does, weigh on me is that every time someone is selling one, someone else is buying one, right?
Yep.
And so, when you see that side of it as well, and hear about people buying at these, when the NFT thing was just like up and to the right, it was crazy, and they're buying at all-time highs. That also kind of concerns me, obviously, especially when I realize that when you talk to a lot of people, and this is across all projects, but there are people playing in the space that you wish you could prevent them from doing so in some way.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like they're just like doing it. I entered the NFT space, and I still am this way, where there's a couple little utility things that I own, like Emit One passes or Quantum and things like that, where I will always just hold one of those for the utility side of it. But on the art side, like almost everything I buy, like 99% of it is because I love it. And I do it with disposable income, right? I'm not doing it with like stuff where my kids won't eat if it goes to zero, right?
Fuck. Yeah.
And that's the thing that bothers me. It's like, I hope people are being wise about this,
There is a lot of magic, and there is like this real deep fulfillment I personally get sometimes when I read these stories, and I'm like, you know what? Like, before this, right, I was a growth engineer at this like Series A startup, and I was, I didn't know what my purpose, quote unquote, was, and like didn't feel a lot of fulfillment in the work that I was doing, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. And like getting to read those stories and seeing the work that we're doing directly translating to people's lives is something that just motivates myself and my team more so than anything. But it's a double-edged sword, exactly like what you're saying, because yeah, man, like there's nothing that me, you, or anybody can do to stop someone from gambling, and like gambling in a big way. But yeah, it's just one of those, it's double-edged sword. But I think that the side of like, being able to create real value in people's lives from the stuff that we build it's just unique to this space. And I want to like keep playing in that zone for as long as possible, because it's high risk, but at the same time, like, man, when we're making startups, when you guys are running Dig, it's like, it's awesome. The employees can be rewarded over a long period of time as their equity vests. In this space, it's so much more like these random people that maybe never would have gotten that opportunity or done anything like that. That's what's cool about it. But I agree, the most of the space is gambling. Most of the space is like people being very irresponsible, and I think that'll change over time. But yeah, it's kind of scary as well.
Yeah, you're buying a piece of and owning a piece of culture, which is kind of cool, right? If we do our jobs right. Derek, what do you call that? You have this saying, I always forget it, where you speak to how the CryptoPunks don't really have any utility, need to do any marketing. What do you call those projects?
I call it no external dependencies.
Yes. So my hope is that we can, as Moonbirds, not anytime soon, but let's just say a decade plus from now, cross the chasm into being so embedded in culture, in meme culture, and just the ethos of all things Web3 and art, that we move over to this no dependencies required, like no win airdrop required, and it stands on its own because of its relevance over the long term, right? And those are projects that will, as we get older and older and eventually pass away, and like hopefully they're still propped up, hundreds of years from now, as a very important piece of what happened in this world of newly emergent NFTs, right? And so that's a
fire. That's fire. I don't think I've ever heard you say that in that way, but that's a banger, Kevin. Like that's a great way.
I owe Derek for that shit. Like he's helped shape a lot of my thinking on this stuff.
No external dependencies. I'm absorbing that. That's cool. I've never.
But that's what CryptoPunks are, right?
Yeah.
Like if the CryptoPunks founders passed away, like please, like, I'm knocking on wood. I love those guys. But, let's just say 75 years from now, whatever, I hate to even say like 50 years from now, they're like, wait a second, I'm still young.
If you're Vitalik, it's like, I think, 3,000 years from now
exactly.
or something? Yeah.
Exactly. But when that does happen, it's like I think the value will actually increase, right? It'll just be like this OG project, and no one's ever going to ask for another airdrop or something, some piece of external utility there.
Yeah, I love that.
Frank, this conversation is amazing. I'm loving the back and forth here. We're chatting about so many different topics from you guys as founders of really bleeding edge projects. Frank, I'd love to get your insight and opinion, and this can be on projects related to Solana or Ethereum or other environments. But as you look across the landscape and doing what you're trying to do with Degods, and with y00ts, what are the projects that you're keeping an eye on? The 4 or 5 different projects that you think are doing the right thing, are in the arena right now, pushing the space forward, are really like coming up with unique concepts, or are playing the game just so much differently than like the wasteland of other folks that are in this space right now, or have kind of bled out. Who are the founders, the projects, or the things that you're most excited about right now in the NFT space?
And Derek will accept Chromie Squiggles as one of your answers if you decide to say
I have the funniest story about Chromie Squiggles, by the way. Yeah, I mean, Chromie Squiggles is the reason I'm even in the NFT space, actually. Like, I'll tell this quick tangent.
You heard it here first.
No, you're right. Yeah, it's not that pretty of a story, but and then I'll answer your question. I'll tell this Chromie thing because it's hilarious. So, I was actually a Bitcoin maxi before kind of getting into this whole space, and I was with my roommate at the time when Chromie Squiggles was dropping, when like art blocks started popping off, loot, all that stuff. And I remember just thinking like, NFTs are fucking stupid. Like, like, this is just JPEGs, bro, right click save. Like, I was literally one of those guys, like, February of last year. And my roommate was just the opposite. He was super open-minded, deep into this NFT stuff early on. And I remember him coming back from some event about NFTs in Los Angeles, and he comes back and he's like showing me this Chromie Squiggle like pamphlet that's explaining generative on-chain art or whatever. And I remember looking at it.
Who's putting out Chromie Squiggle pamphlets?
No, Joe. I think he went to some event where they were talking about generative art, and it was early with Snowfro, and it was just like a pamphlet, and it had a squiggle on it. It's seared in my brain. I'll tell you why. Because he was like pilling me on it. He was just like, dude, this is the future, you don't understand. I was like, bro, this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my whole life. That's a fucking squiggle, right? And then like my boy buys it, buys like a squiggle, I think like 2 3, whatever, like the lowest possible price you could buy a squiggle at. And like within a week, he makes my whole salary, right? And then the next week after that, he gets loot and he makes my whole salary again, doubles it. And I just looked at that and I was like, dude, fuck this, bro. What's going on with NFTs? Like, what am I missing here? And yeah, Chromie Squiggles was like, it's just funny, and I'm not going to be able to convey this on this call, but like how many debates that we had going back and forth and referencing these fucking squiggles. And so they're seared in my mind of just like, yo, Frank, you don't actually know anything, and the world is different than your little box in your head. So it opened up my mind in a big way. So I am a fan of squiggles, but I was a huge hater.
I love this story, and I definitely want to hear the big answer to the question I asked, but the Chromie Squiggle is so sneaky because it has forced this conversation so many times with so many different people. I've heard some variation of this story over and over and over again, 100 times over the last year. There's something about these Chromie Squiggles that create the fiercest debates between people who are in the space and people who are out of the space. It's like the ultimate forcing function to like really grok what's going on with Web3.
I love projects like that. It's back to your point, Frank. Like whenever you can dream up something that is this little moment to just cause a conversation, a discussion, an argument, a disagreement about the future. Like those are those little tiny pieces of candy that like turn into something big later on. They stick in your mind a little bit.
I 100% agree, and that's what makes it so fun and funny. The space is hilarious because like you never know, right? Goblin Town, bro. Like shit like that. It's awesome that we are in a space where like just crazy. It's actually the craziest, most out of the box stuff that does well. Where as we all know, like in startups, in the typical entertainment industry, it's like stuff like this would be ostracized and definitely not be monetarily successful. Where NFTs are almost flipping that on the head, and it's taking like independent art and in the very broad sense of that word and actually making it mainstream or like the most important pieces of the space. But to answer your question, I always say Nouns is my favorite NFT project of all time because I think it fits the description you guys gave earlier of the no external dependencies. But it's such a fun concept at its core of like these daily auctions, and then obviously CC0 piece, but also the level of contribution like coming from the contributors in that community. The square glasses are hilarious, and even just like the prop house thing that's been coming out as well. Like I love that community. It's so pure, but it's also a silent killer. I mean, the way that they make money as a revenue model is ingenious, and the growth rate of that and over time as there's more stakeholders in that group is going to be, I think, absolutely explosive and something that's going to be impossible to ignore. Right now, it still feels a little bit like a toy to a lot of people that don't know what it is, but when you go under the hood, it's one of the most fascinating experiments, crypto native experiments I've ever seen. So that's one for me. I think I put like Moonbirds and Yuga in the other, like I think it's just you two, honestly, that I look at on ETH, if I'm being 100% honest in terms of battle tested, like long-term projects. Because yeah, like I like the idea of a more practical NFT at a core level. Like both you guys and Yuga, I think are where I borrow a lot of inspiration because a lot of the ideals and what you guys are trying to build, I think is grounded in something that, my mom can understand. That's pretty like practical and logical. And as you guys could tell from this conversation, I'm definitely that type of way as well. Like if I can't explain if I can't explain it or I can't understand it and explain it back to you, it's probably not something that excites me. Because yeah, I think that's really important and it makes the space fun. When everything that's mooning and doing well is like hard to explain why there's value, it actually is kind of toxic for the space, I find, in the long term, because now you're kind of like, it's hard for someone to hop in. It's hard for someone to understand and be logical about decisions that they make. And so, yeah, I think those are like the next two tiers. And then after that, you have like the newer projects like Digidaiku. I think it's cool just because Gabe Leiden is a monster, and like what he's gonna do, I think I have no idea, but it's probably gonna be insane. I think he's taking like a choose your own adventure kind of route to NFTs, which is cool. I think outside of that, man, like you guys know this better than I do. Like, there's not that many great NFT projects, right? Like
even on Solana, there's nothing cool on Solana happening.
There are. I am a fan of like DGen Apes, Solana Monkey Business, you know, Famous Fox Federation. Like there are like cool projects. Don't get me wrong, but I think for us, right, like we've been kind of one of the core innovators on like I mentioned, if when our new project comes, so right now Degods market cap is like literally if you take the next 10 projects and combine them in market cap, like Degods is bigger than all of those 10 combined. So it's kind of like unfair a little bit. So I've been looking more towards the ETH side in terms of inspiration in a big way because we're kind of outgrowing Solana. When y00ts comes out, our new project, all it needs to do is hit like a 50-60 SOL floor, which is what the whitelists are trading at, like double that. And then it'll be the second biggest project on Sol. So there's no doubt in my mind that we'll end up launching an ETH project next because there's not enough room right now on Solana. But I'd say
what do you see not enough room? What do you mean by that exactly? You mean like just in terms of dollars in the market?
Yeah, like liquidity in the market, 100%, right? And I think, but I'll tell you this, because I'll bucket Solana projects as a whole, and why I'm excited on the Solana ecosystem, sometimes more so than ETH, because it seems like I'm shitting on Solana, which is not the case. Here's what I think. I think most people that come from ETH to Solana, they'll realize one thing very quickly. Solana is so much more optimized around fun than I think ETH is in a big way. Like, I think everything about Solana NFTs is just absolutely fucking hilarious. Like, it's not the kind of memes where it's like Goblin Town. It's more just like, it's people-oriented memes. The engagement is nuts on Twitter 24/7. Like, if you go right now, Kevin, and you tweet, yo, looking at Solana, bruh, it's over. Your replies, your tweets, it's game over.
Kevin.
Listen, I've already experienced some of that. I have a little Solana O in my name on Twitter because I was an angel investor in Solana way back in the day.
Let's go.
Which is crazy. That was a wild ride.
No, yeah, that's sick. Congrats. I think the reason for it, by the way, is that by definition, Solana is an easier access point than ETH, towards NFTs. It's a lot cheaper to transact. The bottom line of NFTs is a lot cheaper than I'd say anything that's of value on ETH. And so because of that, you get a lot more quote unquote like real people, I think, on the Solana side, where it's like more practical people, funny people that have all day to spend online and on Twitter and stuff like that aren't like doing other stuff. I think that just creates a fun environment. And I'd say the last thing that's cool about Solana for people that are interested, the rules are just not written, right? Like IP rights have not entered the conversation yet. A lot of the stuff that's kind of become accepted on ETH, I would say on Solana, it's all up in the cards. Like we don't know what the actual ecosystem environment community is going to end up being like on Solana. And so I think those are the reasons I'm excited and want to continue to build on Sol. It's just more if you're asking me about inspiration for projects, there are definitely cool, I think, like for example on Solana, there are multiple projects that are very utility focused. Like literally they build tools all day and that's what they're known for. And they're in the top market cap of NFT projects. Like they're some of the top market cap NFT projects on all of Solana, where I don't think that can necessarily happen in a big way on ETH, where, on ETH, you have like sniping bots and tools like that. They're never going to be these massive 10K PFP kind of like market cap projects. On Sol, that's the opposite. There are a lot of projects that are more focused on utility that end up becoming massive projects on Sol, relatively speaking. So I'm a big fan of the Solana ecosystem because I think my pitch to ETH people have always like, yo, are you not having fun with NFTs anymore? Just come to Solana, spend a week there. You're going to have fun again, no matter what. Yeah. Like it's just lit. And
the price points are better, right? It's like TES like that. You can get in there and have some fun with, a couple $100 kind of thing.
Exactly that. Yeah, $100 will take you a long. You're a whale, bro. It's fun in that way. So I think that's what I like about Sol, and that's why we've been able to do so well. Is like, hey, it's so much of engagement. There's so much of excitement about anything that's cool that's happening on Sol, and people rally around it, right? Where on ETH, I think there's more of a competition and more sects between like the different big projects. On Sol, I'd say like everyone wants to see Solana NFTs win. Like I remember when our account got suspended for Degods and y00ts, all of our fucking main accounts got suspended all at once.
I heard that.
Yeah.
Twitter took them down, huh?
Wild, bro. Yo, you got out here, yo. I was like, nah. But nah, I was playing. Just joking, guys. But no, when that happened, it was pretty sick because everyone on Solana, including Anatoly, including the Solana Foundation, was like rallying around our accounts being reinstated, helping us out, and helping that.
Why did it happen? What did they say?
Dude, I think we were just getting too much engagement. No, really, it was the scholarships. Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you heard it here first. Not I'm playing. We're all joking, but you never know with these guys on Twitter. They'll take that seriously. But no, the reason is because I think what happened, we're getting so much engagement on the scholarship bot, and that was like an automated bot. And so I think that flagged us internally. And we were doing this thing where when someone like gets accepted, we'd retweet it from my account, from the Degods account, from other accounts that we had. And I think that violates Twitter's policies now, where they're taking it more seriously around cross like account promotion or something like that.
Gotcha.
And so it was
Did you mark that account as a bot account, by the way? Because you have to do that in settings. Okay.
No, we did. It was 100% marked as a bot account, but I think the rate at which it was tweeting was just like, and it was tagging other people too. So I think those are things that flagged it. I don't think it broke terms and service.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I
was shocked. Yeah, I was
shocked.
shocked.
Must have been an automated thing, right? They must have just caught you up in some kind of like catcher they have running that
must have been where it started, but I think somebody there that didn't understand the context of how consensual and like how positive what we were doing. It wasn't spam in any way. They went in and they perma suspended like 80% of our accounts, no joke. And so it was a process, man. Like we ended up talking to some really high up people at Twitter to get this thing, and we got a lot of people that just said, no, you're not going to get it reinstated, and we were like shitting bricks. Yeah.
What is behind? They're probably Cool Cats holders.
Oh, for sure.
No, I'm just kidding.
Let's just throw the names out there. Yeah,
just 100%. Like just start listing off project after project. Just like
yeah.
All right, Derek's laughing on mute. It's silently over there in the corner. We're just kidding with the Cool Cat. I hold the Cool Cat, so maybe it was me.
Yo, how was the Big 3 stuff? Did you? I know because this season,
I'm so bummed I didn't get a chance to go to one of the games.
Me too. I know, bro. We were like the most hyped about it, and I didn't even get to go to a game. But are you guys going to take that more seriously? I imagine it was similar with you guys where we just did it last second, where we saw the opportunity, thought it would be cool.
Yeah.
Next year, I want to take it a lot more seriously, though. And I know we can did you know we can change the name of the teams next year, too?
I didn't even hear about that. Actually, Vinny's been helping me out a lot with that. He's got the whole team thing going. I still need to connect with him about it. He's been super helpful. He's the one that him and Sonny got the team going. But yeah, that's been a fun one. I love little things like that. It's like not a crazy amount of capital. It's just fun to go out there and have fun and see, the Moonbirds logo up on TV, which is great. Yeah, hey, we got to, before we wrap things up, because we're coming up a little over an hour, dude, we gotta ask you about y00ts, man. You got to give us like the full download on because that's coming out. Is it tomorrow or is it a couple days? Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the deal?
When does this go out?
I mean, we'll get it turned soon. Hopefully Mal
okay,
can get it out tomorrow. Maybe we'll see.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, so y00ts is our second gen collection. The way we're doing it, I think, is a unique approach where I look at the space right now, similar to what we've talked about this whole podcast with what do people actually want? And I realize I don't know if everybody wants a baby version or a mutated version or a second version of a Degod. I think people are more excited that the same team that brought you Degods is coming out with a new collection. So y00ts, in its essence, has nothing to do at all with the IP of Degods, the character of Degods, the utility behind Degods. It's a totally new and different project that's standalone. The only through line is that it's from the same team that brought you, what people know and love as Degods. And the core concept behind y00ts is we want to try to make the strongest NFT community that the blockchain has ever seen. And we've been doing that by curating a lot of the members in the community, as you guys have seen with the scholarships. A lot of the members of the community will be Degods. And I think the way we're looking at it is it's going to be a pretty mysterious kind of what is going to happen with the project, but we want our track record to speak a little bit that, hey, we know how to reward holders. We know how to generate a lot of attention. You put those two things together, and I think you can imagine with a strong community, there's a lot of really crazy stuff we can do. But more than anything, if I had to pitch it in one sentence, with Degods and with y00ts and everything we're building, if you want to have a blast being in the NFT space and you want to have fun, come to Degods, come to y00ts, and check out what we're doing, and come along for the ride. And I guarantee you that you'll have a great time. And I think that's my pitch for y00ts.
Let's get into a couple more intimate details here. So what's the total collection size?
15,000.
So 15,000. How many of them are going back to the actual Degods themselves? Is it one for
10,000. Yeah.
Okay. So 5,000 were available only through scholarships?
Scholarships, and then a way to, and some DAOs on Solana, but they all paid us to get those spots. So it's 1,500 for the DAO pool of different Solana NFT projects, and then 3,500 for scholarships.
So no public mint at all?
No.
Okay, crazy. So you have no idea what they're going to trade for on secondary on day one?
No clue, yeah.
Do you have royalties turned on this collection, Frank?
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. Because
33%,
we're actually making
the standard 33% you like to take?
We're going to do, yeah. Oh, I wish, man. No, we're going to do 5% royalties on all of the, on everything. And yeah, we're getting into a lot of heated debates about how we're going to try some new tech to prevent, people evading royalties, which should be fun. I'm down for the smoke. Just like you guys are down for the smoke on CC0. I'm down to start doing some interesting stuff with people that evade royalties. Let's see what happens. Definitely some people are going to be mad. Definitely some people that are going to be excited. But
I have a great idea, by the way, that I've never shared anywhere.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Just in the spirit of brainstorming. Tell me if this is possible, actually. This is just random shit. I had this idea the other day. It was like one of those shower ideas where if you created your own custom marketplace, and I'm not sure how in Ethereum, I got to talk to one of my engineers about how you would actually do this, but if it transacted outside of your own custom marketplace, which enforced royalties, or it even moved to another wallet, you just slowly degrade the art over time. So if that can happen, and you can do whatever you want, but you just slowly pick away and like you run it through an ImageX or something like that, and you just like hit it with a JPEG filter at like 80% like quality,
like deep fry it,
just keep hitting it, deep frying it every time it gets transferred around.
Like the wide thing, the CryptoPunk thing, the wides. Have you seen those?
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah.
I'll say this. I know it's more of a light idea, but I'm pretty bullish on finding ways to enforce royalties, but giving people a way to repent or like kind of repay the debt. Because I think we both have a pretty, we both value all 10,000 of the JPEGs in our NFT collection, and I think it would be kind of scary to create anything that will be a permanent change because of some action that one user takes, because those NFTs will likely, as we said, over 10 years transact thousands of times, maybe, right, over 10 years.
Yeah, but that's the cool thing about if you do degradation of an image and you could see that in the metadata, people will be like, oh shit, it's valued for less now. Or I like your idea of just being able to repent and repay that. You got all these God terminologies going for you. You just going and repent.
It came off the dome right there, but I think so. I'll give you color on how we're planning to do it. It's actually, this is the cool thing about being on Solana, right? LOL ETH is that it's pretty instant where we can track these smart contracts on these zero royalty platforms, where we could basically say if you list on one of the big ones on Solana, it's called YA. As soon as the NFT is listed on YA, we can flag that NFT so the buyer can see that flag and know that they're not going to get access to like staking or Discord or whatever it is immediately on the moment of listing. And then when delisted, it'll remove that flag pretty instantly. And so the way we're rolling it out ideally is we don't want to penalize buyers, because that's the worst part about enforcing royalties is typically the punishment comes on the buyer. Ideally, we can just disincentivize buyers from wanting to buy on OTC. And so by doing it on the moment of listing, that would be one way to do it. I think you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, here's a question I'll throw back at you guys. You guys do something where for the Moonbird staking, you have to do it through your website to transfer wallets, correct?
To keep it staked, yeah, without it losing its actual stake, you can do a direct transfer, and people use that for OTC too, right? So it does happen. But
it's better if it happens on your rails, I think, in my mind, a little bit, where at least you're like not dependent, like you said, right? External dependencies. It's not dependent on external, sources. What's the usage rate on that? Have you guys seen that being like a pretty popular feature, or?
I'd have to ask one of our engineers how often that transfer function is hit, but it's built into the contract. We'd have to look into that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool for ways, because people usually say, like with OTC prevention, like circumventing royalties, oh, what are you going to do about wall-to-wall transfers? Having that built in is, I think, pretty OP, because now you have a pretty go-to answer of like, look, you should really be transacting these on these accepted marketplaces and or transacting it wallet-to-wallet. And I'm less concerned about OTC than I am about marketplaces taking market share from creator royalty supporting marketplaces because they're circumventing the royalties, where I think like that's just... if we're all working on this NFT thing together, I like the idea of royalties. Not that I'm tied to them, and I do think people should find other ways to get revenue as an NFT project. But at a core level, I think it incentivizes, the founders and the project in a pretty good way. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. I don't think marketplaces should suffer for respecting royalties, and we should try to, as projects, not put the pressure on OpenSea and Magic Eden to end up going zero royalties if they don't have to. So that's how I think about it. I'm more about the marketplaces that have these very easy to track smart contracts. That's where we can start creating prevention mechanisms. OTC, dude, at the end of the day, people are going to OTC. I'm not going to be like a fucking Nazi about people OTCing. It's just more like, hey, let's create as much friction as we can around these vampire marketplaces that are trying to steal market share, in my mind.
Derek, I'm curious, like, you're so wise in this space, and you see a lot of stuff that we don't, having talked to so many projects as with their venture capital hat on and in all things Web3. I've seen some collections say, hey, we might just take a big chunk and set them aside for us as a treasury, skip royalties altogether, don't fight that fight, and then to sell off, let's say, 1,000 NFTs that we hold slowly over time as a way to kind of recoup and make some real revenue here. What are you seeing out there, Derek?
Yeah, so I would say I'm pro royalties for a variety of reasons, not least of which, until there's an alternative business model innovation that allows the next Degods to be Degods, or the next Moonbirds to be Moonbirds, or the next Yuga to be Yuga, I just don't see a world where like royalties can not subsist without the space taking a step backwards. Like, there needs to be business models in place for projects to have capital inflows that are tied to the support of the community in order for these things to get very big and to really push the boundaries of what NFTs and Web3 and the intersection of consumer and this technology can look like in the future. And melting away royalties just like takes the industry a step backwards. So without a business model innovation in place to like replicate some of those capital inflows, like, I'm very much pro royalties. I think the question then becomes, knowing that these are sovereign assets and these are bare, and it's difficult from a programmatic and technical perspective to bake in rules that prevent people from doing whatever they want with those ownable assets. How do we not create a world where, community members are just taking their assets and going like all mercenary and trying to find best price, best execution, zero fee environments by which to like let go of these assets? And I think there is ways that, like, I've talked with a number of creators, there are ways that you can kind of, at the contract level, maybe prevent certain marketplaces from taking your asset. There's probably, Kevin, interesting ways to like bake in degradation or like play with disincentives to trading in environments or marketplaces that aren't conducive to like the royalty structure. The stuff I'm most interested in is the design space that's actually incentivizes people to stay within the community and do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's right.
I don't know exactly what that looks like right now. And I know a number of folks are really thinking about this from first principles, but what does it mean to create a vertical marketplace on top of your community assets that just continues to allow people to know that like there's some incentive in place by which, they'll list there instead of elsewhere? And I think
you'll like this. You'll like this, Derek. I see, because Kevin has our website on one of the tabs. We built something like this. If you go to the website real quick, we have this thing where if we aggregate, the lowest listed price NFT on a royalty supporting marketplace. And what we do is we'll give the person that buys the floor basically of any NFT of a DeGod, we'll get, if you scroll the second thing there, right there, buy the floor, we'll give them a percentage of their royalties back for buying on the approved marketplace.
Exactly.
Which is pretty hilarious. And it's like it's good on both sides, right? Like, people want to see people buy the floor, and then at the same time, like, we can actually incentivize mechanisms like that where I'm like, the floor purchase, the community gets hyped when the floor goes up. I think we can take a hit on royalties there and reward people for buying through approved methods. But I do want to just shit a little bit on the whole concept of holding back NFTs and then selling them. I mean, I don't know about you, Kevin, but I know for me, like, I've never sold a DeGod because I think where we're at right now is complete FUD, and like we're gonna get so much bigger. And it's the most armchair kind of quarterback, response that I've heard on this whole process, because it's the same people in the startup space that say, "Oh, Apple was started in a garage. Like, why do you need to raise VC? Or like, why do you need to hire this engineer for this amount? Or like, why do you, it's like, all right, bro, like, yeah, you could do it in a more lo-fi way and you could do it in this way or that way, but none of the projects that actually have had serious value accrual besides CryptoPunks, which is, I think, a very, it's very much the outlier or exception to the rule than it is the standard of this space. Like, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think most founders of projects should or want to be traders of their own project. And
I'm with you. And then, also it really screws one-of-one artists, right? Because they're not going out and creating 50 of a single work. They're creating one of one, and then guess what? They blow up. Those artworks are sold for $1 million, a few years later, and they get nothing, right? In that world where this doesn't work. So that concerns me. I love what what you did here. That's brilliant. I had an idea a few months ago where I was thinking, okay, an NFT project could hold back, let's just call it half of royalties for the community, and automatically disperse those kind of pro rata out to the community members, the other whether it be Nest of Moonbirds or whatever your project is, and that you could then claim, and you could put it into interest-bearing instrument as well at the same time while it's being unclaimed. And that would, hopefully what you're doing then is you're kind of encouraging the community to rally behind the idea that the trade should take place on one of these markets that respects royalties, so that, they're all equally getting paid. And I know it wouldn't be that much. I did a model in Excel at one point, or Google Sheets, and it's not that much money, but it's something to consider for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this is where it ties everything we talk about in this space, together, is at the end of the day, people have a very blanket way of looking at the space sometimes. And what they don't realize, and operators realize more so in this space, is that, hey, are royalties the perfect way to do NFC incentivization? Like, maybe not. Is holding back the NFTs one way to do it? Maybe not. The answer is that there's no right answer for every single project, and it's different across the board. Right. And so, let people figure it out over time, and let's stray away from blanket statements that royalties are all bad or all good. And I think that'll open up the dialogue so much more and allow people to actually come up with creative solutions for all kinds of different stuff in this space. So yeah, that's why I like Moonbirds. I think you guys are a perfect example of a project that takes a common sense approach in a space that's sorely lacking that. Take a common sense approach to a lot of different ideas and problems that are there. And I'm always going to rally and support people that are just trying shit and doing shit that are interesting. So big fans. Thank you guys so much for having me on.
Oh, Frank, man, it's our pleasure.
Frank,
this has been awesome.
You're awesome, dude. You may be 23, but you've spoken like a true vet builder. It's been awesome to listen to you riff.
Like a boomer, yeah. No, I love it, man. I appreciate you guys so much, and excited, for whatever happens between our collections, and just in general, pleasure to meet you guys, really.
Frank, thank you so much for being on the show, man. It's a pleasure to have you on. And yeah, I think you're right, man. This is the time to lock arms and do creative stuff together, and figure out how we can build this ecosystem, and I love that you have that entrepreneurial spirit. So yeah, it's great to see.
Thank you so much. It means a lot hearing that from you guys. Look up to you in a lot of ways, and appreciate it, and excited to be in the space together, man.
Awesome. All right, that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you would like to help us out, head on over to proof.xyz and click on the reviews button at the very top and leave us a 5-star review. Thanks so much. Take care.